This is a sample newspaper, The Hindu, very popular newspaper in our country. Today's newspaper, Feb 9, 2022. So it's the e-copy of the newspaper, and it's Delhi edition, right? So if you go through this, probably this is the advertisement, the front page, and if you scroll down, you can probably see. You can probably see this particular thing, say e-procurement notice. This is a tender notice. It is from Government of Jharkhand and Urban Development of Department, Nagar Parishad, Vishrampur, right? So e-procurement notice, and you can see they specify the scheme name, and this is very important, called the reference number. This will be useful for quoting the your bid or something like that, and estimated cost and earned money, which is 2% of the estimated cost, and you can see the tender fee, right? This is the amount that you should pay for to for the government, so that they meet out the meeting meeting cost and something like that. Okay, so evaluation cost and something like that, and completion of work is 6 months, something like that. You can see this is a typical example, and you can see the date of publication of the tender on website is 7/2 2022 2 p.m. You see the time is also pretty important, right? So not only the dates, the time is also pretty important. Date start of submission of bids is the same day. The time they advertise on website, the same day you can do. And this is very important. The last day, the time of submission of bids is 15/2. So this month, 15, and today it is 9/2, and we have almost 6 days, and by 5 p.m., not more than 5 p.m. So anything even comes at 5, they're gonna reject that, right? So that's very important. And last date or time of submission to office, you can even give it in person, like 17 to something like that, right? At the location, right? Something like that, right? And date of bid opening, you can see they opened the bid at 17 to, right? So the last day or time of submission to office is 17 to, and then the date of bid opening is also 17, so which means that it will be better if you give it prior to that. Okay, 17 to 3:30 p.m. They're gonna open, but submission closes by 1 p.m. on that particular day for in person at office, right? And this is online submission. It means online submission. This is in person, and this is the address and contact number. This is the contact number and helpline for e-procurement. This is. If you want to know further, you can go for this particular thing, and you can search this website, and you can get to know about this, right? Now let's take a look at what is the actual work. It is the construction of RCC drain with Salab in Danlik Kala. This is something related to that specific region, from house of Niazuddin Ansari to Central Bank, right? So this is the drain, construction of drain, right? An installment of paver block, grilling east side of these, something like that. So this is something construction related stuff, right? And ward, this is ward number, it's not ward number, ward number. So 589. So this is the location of the particular thing, right? And you can even see that this is very short term notice, right? So 17, no, 7th they call, and they want by 17, maximum of 10 day, right? So which means they are in very urgent. So they need to do this particular task, or I mean they need to identify the person who can do the task very quickly. So something like that, right? So this is an example. Let me scroll down a little bit. Scroll down. These are the advertisements. Yeah, here are other so notice inviting e-tendering. So this is something like an pretty much a different format. We can see the executive engineer JSV division Amirpur invites the following tender on behalf of government of Himachal Pradesh. So which means that a government agency on behalf of government of Himachal Pradesh. And the name of the work is providing household connection by Minister Jal Shakti, Hargar Nal Se Jal in LWSS. You can see that this area. And excavation, laying joints, and testing of rising main for boosters and substations. Right. And this is 10 lakh rupees estimated cost and earns money. In that previous case, it is something they've clearly mentioned as some 2% of it, and sometimes 2% of it or some money they just earn as money. And cost of tender is just 400 rupees. So you can see it's not a very huge money as the previous case. But it's just 400 rupee and time of duration is 1 year. And you can see you can fill it in online. So last date of filling or uploading the tender to e-tendering is 22 and 11 a.m. The tender forms and other details conditions can be obtained from this exam. Right. So uh, you can correspond to executive engineer JS division Hamirpur. This is one particular tender, and this is another short term tender. UP Cooperative Sugar Factories Federation Limited, and they want invite for sale of levy free below grade and burnt molasses from cooperative sugar mills and distillery of UP to bona fide consumers. Like this is kind of an not doing any construction work, but instead they have their waste or debris. They want to sell that, something like that. Right? So people use molasses for other purposes. This is sugar factory. The item that is after extraction of sugar, the debris or the molasses like burnt molasses will be just generally disposed. Generally, instead of for disposing it, it might be useful for other industry or other consumers, like in this case. Right, so the e-bid is rupees 20 per quintal, and you can see this is something, right, and start end date, and the nowadays is all e-tendering. You can see e-hyphen tendering is online tendering, right? In this case, e-procurement or e-tendering, something the term they use nowadays. And then Northeastern Railway e-tendering. Check this e-tendering notice. Senior Divisional Materials Manager, Northeast Railway, Varanasi, for an President of India, invites tendering through e-procurement system. Open tender. You can see the term called open tender, which means it's open to all. Even all these things are open tender. But in fact, the other two are specific to for specific work nature. This can be done only by construction company or people involved in construction practices. Whereas this thing is kind of an open tender. Anybody, any citizens of India can quote for this particular project. For the supply of the following items, complete description of the item. You can even see due date is given, description, supply of VHS set, what walkie-talkie radios. You can even purchase on your own and you can negotiate the price from the vendor and you can even supply to them. So this is kind of an open tender, right? Something like that. So the notice, they you can see this is very important. Sometimes they specify note or some requirements or specifications. That is, the firms who desire to participate in tender are advised to electronically register themselves on the above website, for which they would require to have a Class 3 digital signature certificate authority licensed by CC of India. Which means that even though it's open, but there's note that you should register this to this particular agency of a country. Then manual offer against e-tender will not be considered. You can see uh, going there and giving is not accepted. As in this case, you can see at the office submission is accepted. And about any passenger amenity complaint, oh no, not this one, something like that. Right, so this is something the Northeastern Railway of Varanasi or something. And so this is something different thing, and you can even see East Central Railway, e-tender notice, and right, so something like that. And I'll come back to this. So this is also an e-tender, like Office of the Executive Engineers, Mechanical Hospital, and Central Heating Division, Srinagar, and this other things. right? So estimated cost and cost of that particular thing per dock in rupees, and main header inside new oxygen plants and something, right? And something like that. Okay, so here they talk about term called bidder, bid in electronic format in the website by this time. It opens from 6, I mean, and no closes 11 at 2 p.m. Um, Time will be open and department. This is something. Okay. All right. So I think this is today's newspaper, and we could able to find a lot of tender notice. Another tender here from Delhi Jal Board, right? Then Government of Jharkhand Entrance Competitive Exam Board. Like that. This is an application, and this is the tender, right? So, all right. So you can even see tender fees are non-refundable. So that has to be met for evaluation or to given paid to the people or the experts for evaluating the bid. Um, right. So right. So this is something like the different tenders, right? So I'll close this for a moment. All right. So that summarizes bid, and then the tender implementation, all this. As I told you, deadline, specifications, and cost is very important. And one thing that learns deposit, right? So and tender fee or something like that, right? So this is something you can add to the existing, add that to our existing discussion, right? Something like that, right? And pre-qualification bidders. In one example, they mentioned like you have to register with some agency, then only you can bid or something like that, right? So that's pre-qualification of bidders. And then this is after you just send the bid. They will be the deadline that they showed you the deadline, no? So 17 to 2022 at 5 p.m. they start evaluating the bid, something like that. And once that is done, nowadays is e-tendering, so they don't have to invite people individually. They can even do it across globe via virtual medium or something like that, right? So and something like that. So this is what we talked about: bidding date, evaluation of tenders, and something. And now the contract procedures. What happens once the tendering process is over and the agency or the client or the people who asked for bidding have come to a conclusion, or they have selected a, good or optimal um, person to construct, or agency to construct their particular need, right? Something like that, right? So the contractual procedure, right? So this is the one of the important thing that you should really keep in your mind, that you keep in your mind. So first is given us deadline for acceptance. So this is very important. So it is not like I give you a contract today and you start your work from tomorrow. It's not possible because the contractor has to mobilize their resources, their money, and even they have to plan for their activities. No, they might be a little surprised because sometimes some contractor may think they may not get this particular project, but finally if they get it, they should have some buffer time to really think the realistic situation, right? Something pretty much which is not preparation is not very common across contractors. Say if you talk about companies like L&Ts, they have a very fledged contract systems, and they have a very good mechanism to control variability in terms of project management. But think a small construction company, they may not have as good practice as a MNC or L&T, so they need some buffer time to really think of accepting the contract. The very important thing is here they may accept and they may reject, but generally they accept it. But finally they think that it'll be too much for them or too much burden for them. Then if they are like, for example, if a particular bigger company quotes for a project, and meanwhile the same company gets projects from other tenders or something like that, and sometimes they might get a project which is very higher value than the quoted project, then they might think of withdrawing or something like that. So in that case, the deadline for acceptance will be really important. Generally, it will be depending upon the duration of the project. For 1 year project, 1 year completion, but they might give 1 month time, something like that. This is not fixed. It depends upon the particular tender. So they might give 1 month time to really decide upon, or if they want to revise their, methodology, they can still able to do that. So 1 month time is a buffer time, or 30 days generally. They'll be given a deadline for accepting. Or sometimes they might even give 1 to 3 months time, right? So they might give 3 months time. So they have an ample time to decide upon on something like that. Fine. If they accept is fine. So if they accept is fine. But what happens if they reject or withdraw, right? Draw. If they reject or withdraw. So in that case, some fee from them will be collected. So instead of fee, you can even call them as a penalty. Some penalty for wasting the entire period and time for not only the evaluators but also the other bidders, right? So they collect penalty from them, and then if this reject or withdrawal, it is for more projects or more tender, they will be blacklisted, which means that without interest, they simply send quotations to all the tenders, and they will be blacklisted. And in that will reflect, that will be a very detrimental to the company, because next time when they quote, if the name is in blacklist, they will be removed from the shortlisting or pre-qualification stage itself. So pre-qualification of tender itself, they will be rejected, and they will not be given, because they are frequent offenders, right? So they uh, they withdraw, or they, even though they accept, even though they get the contract, they just generally withdraw or reject something. So this is something like an violation. But generally, for 1 or 2 projects they withdraw, they can give a reasons. This is very important. So before they get blacklisted, they can give their own reasons for withdrawal, right? So the reason they can give us, like, they become bankrupt, or they think that they don't have much resources. When they quote, they might have got resources, say for example manpower, but after the evaluation of the bid, and when the contract gets awarded, they think that they had another project and where they can pump in their resources effectively, and they are running out of resources, right? Something like that. So that's a reasonable, justification for withdrawing. In that case, they just generally penalize with just the minimum amount or the penalty cost or something. So that's very important. Then no response. Even after they get the contract, and if they don't reject, or they don't say anything about withdrawal, in that case also the penalty is taken from them, right? And it will be generally, there's no reason, so there will be only blacklisted. So they don't do any stuff, something like that. Fine. And very important is called change orders. Kindly pay attention to this. This is a very, very important thing that you should know in contractual procedures. But change order in the sense, like, for example, uh, during the bid submission, the cement price may not be as high, whereas once it is evaluated, at that moment the cement price is a little higher. So in that case, the contractor or the person who got the contract can ask for change orders. Change orders in the sense like any like variation. Variation in terms of cost or price of items. Say, for example, if they hire JCB and the association, like the JCB association, says that, like the excavators association say that from this point onwards, per day they should be paid 800 rupees instead of 750 rupees, something like that. They decide upon, right? So that will be detrimental to the contractor or the person who quotes or gets the contract. So in that case, like so all those things, variations, or can even call hike in terms of cost or price of items, hiring charges. So all these things, what generally it is like the person who got the contract, or I just case in this case, I just mentioned contractor gets the contract. You can call them as requesting client, or you can even put owner, or one who awards the contract, right? So if both agrees, then they can continue. So this particular thing is called change order, or in other sense, like the technological development. So technological development. Say example, the you can even call temperature sensors. Uh, if a particular construction requires temperature sensors, and the type of temperature sensors they quoted in the initial bidding, right? But at that moment, like when the contract is awarded, there was a new discovery in the temperature sensor, and then it was like pretty much very good, very versatile than the one that was quoted, but it is a little pricey. So in that case, instead of going with the old temperature sensor or absolute, which means like there was some disruptive disruptiveness happens, like which means that that becomes absolute. The temperature sensor which we quoted becomes absolute. One typical example I can give you is that the film roll cameras. Like film roll cameras is nowadays you don't find it anywhere, right? So even digital cameras is in the verge of uh, you know in a verge of declining. The reason is that the mobile phones now can give good quality photography facility, right? Something like that. So the one a DSLR have has the maximum megapixel of 25, but now we can see even high-end mobile phones can give more than 35, 40, and something like that, right? So that's become a disruptive. So if I quote it and with the obligation of the contractor, I can tell them like I don't have any problem in providing you the old temperature sensor, but now the availability is there. Like now the new product is there. Like why can't we go with that so that the finished product will be high quality and with the latest trend, something like that, right? So in that case, the contractor generally requests the client, and then if the client agrees, then they will do a process called change orders. So this is a typical you know um, thing, right? So this is done, right? So this is up to the deadline of acceptance, and then once the once all this is done and mutual discussion between the client and the contractor, next step will be the contract award or they also call as contract awarding, right? This is the final step, right? So once they say yes within the deadline, and then they do not ask for any change orders, or if they ask for change orders, it's a revised thing, right? So they have something this, and then we will be generally awarding them the contract. So in this case, there are three important things that you should know. One is called general conditions of contract, special conditions of contract, special conditions of contract, and alternate dispute resolution. It is also known as ADR, right? Something. So general conditions of contract is the actual contract document, right? Say so and so has requested no invited tenders, and out of that the so and so got selected, and then this contract is for 1 year or 10 years or 6 months or 4 months, and then the cost of the contract is this much, and these are the different clauses in the contract, and the contractor and the client mutually sits together and drafts this particular thing. Is the general conditions of contract. And special conditions of contract is where we talk about violations. What happens if the contractor violates? But unfortunately, any violation by the client or non-payment of, when generally not given in special condition of contract. So it's more of an one-sided, because contractor gets the blame than the client. But if for a good contract document, there should be a clause for both, right? Even you take rental agreements, you don't talk about violations of the owner, but we talk about only the violation of the the tenant, where if the tenant do this and this, they have to pay penalty and something like that, and then termination of the rental agreement, and then they will be moved out of the particular house or something like that, or rental property. So as simple as this, contractors, what happens if the contractor violates? First is they don't finish it within the time, or they do with the poor quality stuff, with materials or with technology or with manpower. And third one is they don't meet the deadline. And finally, not only deadline, so they become irresponsible in between, so that the project duration goes up, and other problems may happen because of that negligence or something like that, right? So those conditions like violations, and it's you cannot call a reprimanding, but you can call violation and consequences. This will be generally dealt in this particular special conditions of contract, right? And this is something and very important thing that you should know in contract awarding. First one will be the general conditions of contract, or is the actual contract document uh, with project clauses and something like that, right? So you can even take generic clauses, so and so, this thing, something like that, right? Then special conditions of contract and violations. What happens if you violate and the contractor violates, and its consequences, something like that, right? If they don't finish within the deadline, every 1 day after the deadline will be considered as the penalty day, and the cost incurred cost incurred after that will be paid to the owner by the contractor, and then that will be decided like how many percentage of the cost of the particular construction project. So those things all comes under special conditions of contract. But not only that, notwithstanding that, if a contractor finishes before the deadline with a high quality construction process, then he should be generally given a remuneration or kind of an honorarium, in which to appreciate for their good construction process. That is why L&T people prefer L&T because they have a very good mechanism in terms of planning, and in most of the projects they finish it ahead of the time, right? So ahead of the deadline, so they got remuneration or appreciation from the particular owner or the agency, right? So that's the one important thing. So that should be also in the special conditions of contract. Then third and very important thing is alternate dispute resolution. Generally, contracts are not criminal proceedings, but it's all civil proceedings. Like contract between a companies and all comes under civil proceedings, right? Say if you go to a court and for a contract violation, and if the both the parties they were very adamant and the consensus were not met, say if they can take up the court proceedings for 15 years. Think about the original nature of the project. Why do we go for contract? To get things done very quickly and within a good quality boundary, right? But if you go for court proceedings, even if you see violations, it will be years together, and the project will be generally hampered, or it will not be moving, progressing, and it will be the same. The status of the art will be the same with under construction only, right? So in that case, people generally look for alternate dispute resolution. That's generally in contract. The first thing they do is conciliation. First thing they do is conciliation. So what does that mean? Is it is not about court proceeding, but if they find any violation uh, from the contractor side or from the owner side, both the parties will sit together and they will be resolving under a third party under a mutual discussion. So I repeat, in a conciliation is a mutual discussion within parties by a third party, right, in front of a third party, right? So the third party is generally the council or senate of that particular organization. Say, for example, if it is a construction, project, and the client might be somebody like in an automobile industry who want to extend or construct a particular plant in their project, and the contractor will be from the construction company, and both these two are different organizations. So they can take a person, a third party from the industrial sector, like the head of the industry or president of that industrial organization, and something like that, or even well-known, theoretician or management practitioner, or even a retired judge or something like that, right? Something like a third party who should, without bias to anybody, like either the client side or the contractor side. So that will be generally taken, and the person or the group of persons, say, who does the role of mediating or conduct mutual discussion to get the resolution, called conciliators. It could be a single person or a group of person, depending upon the nature of the alternate dispute resolution clause you put in your contract document, right? So those people are called conciliator. They conduct meeting, and then they get the consensus. They get the consensus, right? Right. So if what happens if they don't get any agreement, or if they don't get any final outcome of the meeting, then they will go for arbitration. Generally they'll go for arbitration, right? So this is a court proceedings, but it's not criminal proceedings, but it's a civil proceedings, and it will be happening in the court, a district court or high court, depending upon the jurisdiction, and then it has its own meaning. It will not be done in regular court like the civil or criminal proceedings, but it will be done in the court where there's a separate section called arbitration. So This is an industrial dispute mechanism, right? So industrial dispute resolution mechanism, right? So that will be a very much interesting thing. In the next class, we'll be taking a look at the arbitration and conciliation, right? So in detail, that comes to end of today's lecture.